The Man Who Wrote Against Time, The Courage of Chiune Sugihara. In the summer of 1940, outside a small Japanese consulate in Kaunas, Lithuania, hundreds of desperate people gathered. They carried worn suitcases. They held crying children. They had no country willing to take them. Nazi Germany was swallowing Europe, and Jewish families were running out of places to hide. Inside that building lived a quiet Japanese diplomat named Chiune Sugihara. He had a pen, he had a desk, and he had a choice. History remembers men who command armies. It remembers presidents and generals. But sometimes history is changed by someone who simply decides to say yes when everyone else says no. Chiune Sugihara said yes. A diplomat sent to watch, not to rescue. Sugihara was not sent to Lithuania to save lives. He was sent to gather intelligence. Born in 1900 in Gifu Prefecture, Japan, he grew up in a middle-class family and studied Russian, eventually becoming fluent in the language. Because of this rare skill, Japan posted him to Lithuania in 1939, just as Europe was sliding into war. His assignment was clear: observe Soviet and German troop movements in the Baltic region. Lithuania at that time was tense and unstable. After Nazi Germany invaded Poland, Jewish refugees flooded into neighboring countries. Then in June 1940, the Soviet Union invaded Lithuania, bringing even more fear and uncertainty. Kaunas became what one historian later called a Casablanca of the North, a city filled with spies, refugees, and political tension. Sugihara's home was also the Japanese consulate. His wife Yukiko and their young children lived upstairs. Outside his gate, frightened Jewish refugees lined up, hoping for something that might save them: a visa. The order from Tokyo. The refugees had a fragile plan. Many carried an unusual note written into their passports by the Dutch honorary consul Jan Zwartendijk. Instead of issuing a traditional entry visa, he had written that no visa was required for entry to Curacao, a Dutch island in the Caribbean. The statement was technically correct, but it was incomplete. It did not guarantee that refugees would actually be admitted. It simply meant that under Dutch colonial law, prior approval was not required to request entry. Yet that small sentence accomplished something crucial. It gave the refugees a declared destination. Under international travel rules at the time, a person could not receive a transit visa, permission to pass through another country, without proof of somewhere to go next. Curacao became that somewhere. It was not a safe haven. It was not a promise. It was a legal technicality, but it was enough. With that notation in their passports, the refugees could now request what they truly needed: a Japanese transit visa. Sugihara's visa would allow them to travel east across the Soviet Union, pass through Japan, and continue onward. Sugihara did what a disciplined diplomat should do. He asked Tokyo for instructions. The answer came back: do not issue visas to anyone without proper documentation and sufficient funds. He asked again. The reply was firmer: do not ask again. The rules were clear. Most of the people waiting outside his gate did not meet those requirements. Now the choice was his. I just pitied them. Years later, when his son asked why he had helped the refugees, Sugihara answered with disarming simplicity: I just pitied them. That was all. No grand speech about heroism. No dramatic explanation about justice or politics. Just compassion. In July 1940, he began writing visas anyway. For 6 weeks, from July 18 to August 28th, he worked up to 18 hours a day. Each visa had to be handwritten. Each one allowed only 10 days of transit through Japan, just enough time to cross the Soviet Union by train to Vladivostok and then sail onward. 10 days. That was the thin thread between life and death. The line outside his gate never seemed to shrink. At first there were 10 or 20 people. Then there were hundreds. He could not stop. By the time he left Lithuania, he had issued approximately 2,140 handwritten transit visas. Many were family visas, meaning each document covered multiple people. Historians estimate that roughly 6,000 lives were ultimately saved. Toward the end, time became more precious than formality. Sugihara began writing only essential information, and his signature, stamping papers quickly to save seconds. Seconds meant lives. His fingers grew swollen and stiff. His wife later recalled that he soaked his hands in warm water each night so he could hold the pen again the next morning. His handwriting, once neat and precise, became hurried and strained. Every minute he spent eating was a minute someone waited. Every hour of sleep meant another family might not reach safety. He was racing something invisible, the closing of borders, the tightening grip of war, and he kept writing. The escape route through the East. The visas were only the beginning. Refugees still needed permission to cross the Soviet Union. Sugihara, fluent in Russian, negotiated with Soviet authorities to secure transit. Eventually, Moscow approved passage, partly because the transit fees brought valuable foreign currency. Then the journey began. Thousands of miles by train across Siberia, from Lithuania to Moscow, from Moscow to Vladivostok, across forests, rivers, and frozen plains. They were not simply crossing a border, they were crossing the largest landmass on Earth. From Vladivostok, they boarded ships bound for Japan. Many stayed temporarily in Kobe, where Jewish communities and aid organizations offered support. Others continued to Shanghai, the United States, Canada, or Palestine. One man with a pen changed the future of tens of thousands. Today, scholars estimate that between 40,000 and more than 100,000 descendants are alive because of those visas. What really happened at the train station? For years, stories circulated that Sugihara continued signing visas as he was leaving Lithuania, tossing papers from the train window. It is a powerful image, but the truth is quieter. The station was heavily guarded by Soviet soldiers. He may have written a few final documents before departure, but there was no dramatic scattering of papers. As the train pulled away, he reportedly bowed deeply to those left behind and apologized that he could not write more. Even after saving thousands, he felt it was not enough. He did not act for glory. He acted because people were suffering. The miracle of the Mir Yeshiva. Among those in line was an entire Jewish school, the Mir Yeshiva, with roughly 350 students and faculty members. If Sugihara had followed orders, that institution might have vanished. Instead, they crossed Siberia. They survived the war in Shanghai. Afterward, they rebuilt in Jerusalem and Brooklyn. Today, the Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem is one of the largest centers of Jewish study in the world. Sugihara did not just save individuals, he preserved a culture. After the war, silence and obscurity. When Sugihara left Lithuania in September 1940, he continued serving in Europe. In 1944, Soviet forces arrested him along with other diplomats. He was held for nearly 3 years before returning to Japan in 1947. Shortly after his return, Japan's foreign ministry asked him to resign during a post-war staff reduction. Many believe this was a delayed consequence of his disobedience. For years, he lived in relative obscurity. He worked ordinary jobs, including for a trading company in Moscow. His neighbors did not know he had saved thousands of lives. Even his own son did not fully understand the scale of what his father had done. Sugihara never described himself as a hero. Recognition at last. In 1984, Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Authority, Yad Vashem, recognized Chiune Sugihara as one of the righteous among the nations. He remains the only Japanese citizen to receive that honor. He traveled to Jerusalem in 1985 to accept the award. He died on July 31, 1986. Today, memorials stand in Lithuania and Japan. Streets bear his name. Survivors and their children continue to tell his story. But perhaps the most meaningful tribute is this: because he chose compassion over obedience. Thousands of families exist who otherwise would not. The legacy of a pen. The Holocaust remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. Millions were murdered, Entire communities vanished. But in that darkness, there were lights, like Raoul Wallenberg in Hungary, who used protective passports to save tens of thousands. Sugihara used the power he had and stretched it beyond what was allowed. He did not stop the war. He did not defeat an army. He simply chose to act when action mattered. His visas were called visas for life, and that is exactly what they became. In the end, the story of Chiune Sugihara is not only about the past, it is about the present. If a line of frightened people stood outside our door and the rules said no, what would we do? Would we follow the rules, or would we pick up the pen?
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Prefecture. Definition. A prefecture is a large area or region of a country that has its own local government. In Japan, a prefecture is similar to a state or province. Example: Gifu Prefecture is one of the regions in Japan. 2. Fragile. Definition. Fragile means easily broken, damaged, or harmed. It can describe objects or situations. Example: the glass was fragile, so she carried it carefully. 3. Haven. Definition. A haven is a safe place where people can go to feel protected and secure. Example: the small village became a haven for families escaping the war. 4. Strained. Definition. Strained means stretched too much or under pressure. It can describe muscles, hands, voices, or relationships. Example: his hands felt strained after writing for many hours. 5. Landmass. Definition. A landmass is a very large area of land, such as a continent or a huge part of a continent. Example: Asia is the largest landmass on Earth. 6. Obscurity. Definition. Obscurity means not being known or noticed by many people. Example: after the war, he lived in obscurity, and few people knew his story. 7. Protective passport. Definition. A protective passport is a special travel document that says a person is under the protection of a certain country. Example: the diplomat gave protective passports to refugees to help keep them safe.
Comprehension questions. 1. Where and when does the story begin? Answer: the story begins in the summer of 1940, outside the Japanese consulate in Kaunas, Lithuania. 2. Why were hundreds of people gathered outside Sugihara's consulate? Answer: they were Jewish refugees, looking for visas to escape from Nazi-controlled Europe. 3. What was Sugihara's original job in Lithuania? Answer: he was sent to gather intelligence and observe Soviet and German troop movements. 4. Why was Sugihara able to work in Lithuania? Answer: he was fluent in Russian, which made him valuable as a diplomat in that region. 5. What was the purpose of the note written by Jan Zwartendijk in the refugees' passports? Answer: the note stated that no visa was required to enter Curaçao, giving the refugees an official destination. 6. Why was the Curaçao note important for getting a Japanese transit visa? Answer: at that time, people needed proof of a destination before they could receive a transit visa. 7. What instructions did Sugihara receive from Tokyo? Answer: he was told not to issue visas to people who did not have proper documents and sufficient money. 8. Why did Sugihara decide to issue visas anyway? Answer: he felt compassion for the refugees and said he just pitied them. 9. How long did Sugihara work issuing visas? Answer: he worked for 6 weeks, from July 18 to August 28, 1940. 10. Approximately how many visas did Sugihara issue? Answer: he issued about 2,140 handwritten transit visas. 11. How many lives are estimated to have been saved because of those visas? Answer: it is estimated that around 6,000 lives were saved. 12. Describe the journey the refugees took after receiving the visas. Answer. They traveled by train across the Soviet Union to Vladivostok. Then sailed to Japan, and later moved to other countries. 13. Why is the Mir Yeshiva important in this story? Answer. About 350 students and teachers from the Mir Yeshiva were saved. And the school later rebuilt and continues today. 14. What happened to Sugihara after the war? Answer. He was arrested by Soviet forces for a few years. And later asked to resign from Japan's foreign ministry. 15. What lesson does Sugihara's story teach about courage? Answer. It teaches that real courage can mean choosing compassion over strict obedience to rules.